Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. I'm your host, Julie Fairhurst, and today I am here with Lorella,
Lorea.
Lorea. Got it. I got to put that little thing on my tongue.
Yes.
Lorea Martinez. Um, so let me tell you a little bit about what we're going to talk about, and then we'll dive into it. So burnout does not always happen because we've chosen the wrong path. Sometimes it happens because we are doing work we deeply believe in. My guest today, Lorea Martinez, spent more than 20 years working in education and living what she believed was her purpose. Even yet, doing meaningful work could not protect her from burnout. Lorea is the author of the new book, Within the Heart, Living with the Heart in Mind, published in June of 2026, in which she shares her own experience with burnout and the practices that helped her reconnect with her story and her purpose. So today, we're going to be challenged by some of the misconceptions around burnout and explore what our emotions may be trying to tell us before our minds and our bodies finally do. Well, welcome so much to the podcast. I am so pleased that you are here.
Thank you for having me, Julie.
Oh, you're so welcome. Well, let's dive in. You spent more than 20 years working in education, and you felt that that was living your purpose. When did you first realize that something was no longer right?
Well, I had a moment that was very telling. I was walking on a morning with a colleague, and we were discussing my consulting business, and he was helping me think through how to increase revenue, how to pursue new work. And in the middle of that conversation, it was a low stakes. We were just brainstorming. I just felt feelings of overwhelm and anxiety like filling me up. And I started crying and couldn't stop. We were in the middle of the street, so I was there bawling. And that was a moment when I realized, wow, things are really off. And I knew that things were off, but I hadn't allowed myself to admit that. But that was like a turning point where I said, oh, I need to slow down here. I really need to look at really what's happening. What am I feeling and why am I feeling that way? And that's the moment when I was able to start and name that I was feeling burned out, and some things in the way that I was approaching my work needed to change.
Ah, yeah, it's interesting how you're saying you're just walking down the street, you're having a conversation, and for whatever reason, anxiety builds up and the dam bursts. Yeah, and sometimes I guess that's just how it happens sometimes.
Yes,
Yeah,
and when we are going through a process, like burnout is not a one-time event, right? That
right.
was not that was probably the summit of my burnout when I realized, oh, I'm like reaching that peak. But things had been building through several months. And as a, high performing working woman, what I did was to keep plowing forward. And when I felt, oh, I'm not feeling as motivated by things that were fulfilling before, I just kept pushing forward and striving. And that was the part of my own pattern as a person that I needed to look at and reflect on why that was the always the driver of my actions versus really listening to what was happening in my heart, and that my emotions were communicating, but I was not allowing myself to listen.
Yeah. Well, looking back, what were the early warning signs that you overlooked, dismissed, or explained away?
Yes, one of them was the lack of joy, like things that were motivating before that were not fulfilling. I had lost that passion for things that were truly what made my work meaningful to me. That was one. Then the fact that small things became big things. So like this conversation with a colleague, we were just brainstorming, and it felt like such a big deal because in that moment, the thought of putting anything extra in my on my plate felt like an impossible task. And then the third thing is rest. I knew I was getting enough rest, but I didn't feel rested at the beginning of the day. So that also adds up to I think the anxiety that you feel when you know something is wrong, but you don't stop long enough to allow yourself to name what's happening, right? So the tendency again is for us to keep pushing even when we are not feeling well.
Well, and when you're pushing and you're not feeling well, what do you think is happening beneath the surface?
Yeah, so in my case, I had so many feelings that I wasn't seeing. One was overwhelmed, the anxiety, but also fear, because I knew that up to that point, work had been so meaningful. I was living my purpose, it was my life's passion, and suddenly it wasn't anymore. So if I'm not doing that, what am I doing? Right? So there's a question also related to identity when it comes to burnout that I believe that it takes us a while to name that we are burnout, because if we are not doing the thing that we are doing today, what are we going to do in the future? So there's a fear around the uncertainty of what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's yeah, yeah. Burnout is real. Burnout is absolutely a real thing. Well, we hear the term emotional intelligence often, but what does it really mean in our everyday lives?
That means, in a very simple way, being smarter with feelings. And that entails listening to your emotions. So, emotions are data, they are information. It's almost like a conversation from you to you. So, emotions are sending you a lot of signals. And when you are able to listen to what's the message, there's a lot of insight that you can gain. And that requires, it's a practice like many of the emotional intelligence skills of really sitting with your feelings and trying to understand, well, what was that overwhelm all about? In my case, it wasn't about the work of, what it would look like to do something else, but just all the other things that were around it. So identifying those emotions and being able to be accurate about what you experience, that is at the core of emotional intelligence.
How can a lack of emotional self-awareness contribute to burnout?
I think it can accelerate it, because if you
Mm.
don't have that awareness, again, you are going through the moves of your life, you are going through your routines, your habits. But if you are not paying attention to those emotions, you are missing that information. And it is really damaging for your own well being if you continue to ignore your feelings, ignore your emotions. And because we live in society and in community, it not only affects you as an individual, but it also affects your partner, your children, your friends, your co-workers, right? Everybody who's around you. If you don't have that self-awareness, you might do things or say things, or even your presence can be impacted when you don't have that self-awareness, because you are not seeing yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, what emotions do you think women commonly suppress because they have been taught that feelings are inconvenient, unprofessional, or even selfish?
I would say anger is a big
Mm,
one,
yeah,
because it is an emotion much more associated with men and males. So in social context, particularly, if a woman expresses anger, everybody kind of like stands back and is like, wow, what's happening, right? While the
right.
same situation with a man expressing anger might be perceived very differently by others. So I think anger is a big one. And the challenge there is that anger is actually a very important emotion, because it shows, or the message is that there's a need that there's a block, something it's getting in the way for you to meet your needs. And it is also a tool to fight against injustice or things that are not right in your life. So anger is actually one of those emotions that if you can experience it, and of course, there is another part which is related to expressing that emotion in a constructive way, right? Like
Yes.
the experience of anger is okay, but of course what you do with it or how you respond to it, and if you are directing towards others, there's some work there that probably needs to be done in order to do that in a constructive way. But allowing yourself to feel that can be very motivating. Is actually one of those emotions that is a driver for change in your life.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, I was thinking about a few of my girlfriends, and I can't think, I don't remember even having conversations with them around something they were angry about, hurt,
Mm-hmm.
disappointed, afraid, sad, but rarely anger. But anger's got to be there because it's an emotion that we all have.
Yes. And I would say, I would take a step bit further. If you think about women and children, that's the moment when women show anger. If there's anything related to their own kids, something is going on at school, their kids are being mistreated, or they're being, there's an unfairness, or there's some kind of concern related with children, women will be really fast to show that anger and advocate. I think when you turn that towards themselves is so much harder. When you are
Yeah,
trying to advocate for your own needs, the things that you want, the obstacles, it's harder because we don't allow ourselves to be angry because it's not socially, is not, we're not being rewarded socially showing anger. So we don't do it.
right. Yeah. Mm. Well, what do you think the difference is between managing our emotions and simply burying them so we can just keep going?
Yes, that's such an important question. So, managing emotions is really going through a process where you are actively listening to your emotions and navigating them in a successful way. And that means that you are letting yourself feel the emotion, but you are not letting the emotion drive your behavior. Emotion is there to provide you information. You can listen to it. And then once you have that information, you have so much more data and insight to do something about it. Right. And the something can be just to be quiet and sit with it. In other times, it means going and advocating for yourself. Other times, it might mean something else, but really
Yeah.
listening to that information. When you suppress your emotions, what you are doing is invalidating your experience. And that's the hard part, that it might not seem a big deal in the short term. But if you do that consistently over your lifetime, it can be very damaging even to your own self-esteem when you are constantly not allowing yourself to experience your life, and to maybe there's probably some judgment that you are putting on your emotions.
And then you don't feel worthy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that just clicked because how can you feel worthy if you're denying yourself
Yes.
and just pushing everything down and yeah, wow. Well, please introduce us to heart in mind model. So, what does heart represent and how did you develop it? And I just noticed the picture on your wall. That's
Yes.
great. Yeah.
So HART is an acronym that identifies five social and emotional skills. And the H stands for honor your emotions, which is exactly what we were talking about. So we see
Yeah.
emotions, we treat them with respect, we treat them with care because we want to know what's happening, right? Is our internal weather. The E stands for elect your responses, and that has to do with how you are making decisions in your life. And normally we want to create that space between stimulus and response. So to be very conscious, very aware of how you are making decisions in your life. The A stands for apply empathy, and that's being able to connect with the emotions of others. But in my model, Empathy also includes empathy towards self. And I feel like that's such an important part, especially for women, to apply self-compassion, to be kind and nurturing to ourselves, the same way that we are nurturing towards everybody else, right, around us. The R stands for reignite your relationships. So that's your social skills, how you are building community anywhere you go, how you are using relationships as a support network for your own growth and development. And finally, the T, which is kind of like putting the cherry on top of the cake, is for transform with purpose. And that gives you the why, the compass that is orienting your actions, how you are aligning your everyday with that sense of direction in your life.
Yeah. I love that you said empathy for self because I think as women we're just so hard on ourselves,
Yeah.
much too hard on ourselves. And we might have empathy for everybody around us, but we don't tend to give it to ourselves.
Yes, it's an area that it is very hard for women. And as you mentioned in the introduction, I've been in education for many years, and the last few years I was working actively training teachers and helping them support these skills. And this is an area that I can tell you is very hard for educators in particular, but I think for women in general, because it's hard to admit with that vulnerability that you are worthy of that same care and same kindness. And
Yeah.
self-compassion actually can be very healing if you are going through any kind of life transition or going through a difficult time in your life.
Mhm.
Having that internal voice that is there for you, like if you had a good friend, it can be also very liberating. So you are not depending on others to provide that support, but you are nurturing yourself and providing yourself with that same care and kindness.
Oh, yeah, I love that. That makes me want to hug myself. Give
Yes. Yeah.
myself a good hug. Yeah, yeah. Well, how can the heart in mind practices help a woman who feels disconnected from herself but does not know where to begin?
Yeah, so because it's a model, all those skills are interconnected. And I would say, you can follow your heart, you can follow the acronym, and
Yeah.
each of those skills has a leading question. So a question that can help you kind of like unpack a little bit, even like a difficult situation you are going through in your life. So just as an example for honor your emotions, the question is, what am I feeling? So you can sit with that question as a reflection and just try to really name what's your experience and what is it that how are you responding to that situation? And with emotions, normally I like to think about it as an iceberg, because most of the emotions that are allowed live above the water, and those are the ones that are socially acceptable. Normally, those are the ones that we are able to name first. But there are many emotions under the water that like to sit there, right? And those are the hardest to name, to admit that we experience things related to loneliness, hurt, disappointment, right? Betrayal, like a lot of things that it's harder to admit when we experience those things.
Mhm.
So going through that model, it can be very helpful as a way to unpack any challenge that you are going through, because each one of those skills gives you something specific that you can do, is very applicable and very practical.
Yeah. Well, what was, so using your model, what was one of the most important parts of it for your own recovery from burnout?
I would say that self-compassion was a big part, but
Mm.
also the purpose. So purpose, I had been teaching this to others, that purpose is something that we revisit many times in our lifetime. So sometimes purpose is thought as something that is almost like a destination. Once you get it, you see what it is, you are done, right? You don't have to do anything else. You can continue with your life. Well, what happens is we have different life experiences, we grow, we age, right? Our kids grow and our circumstances change. So as we are aging, also we have to revisit that purpose because it evolves over time. And for me, when I realize, oh, I think I need to revisit my purpose because I had lost that joy and that motivation. And being able to go through that process and ask, well, what are the things that I want to be doing? How can I provide my gifts and my strengths to contribute to the betterment of society? And I had to go through that process and see, oh, yes, my purpose is evolving. So I cannot be doing the exact same thing with my time. I have to change a little bit the perspective. And that was very helpful. And once I saw, oh, there's a new direction here, then almost everything comes into place because you are able to really make all the other skills work in alignment with that sense of purpose.
Yeah. Well, how can women use emotional intelligence when they're making difficult decisions about business, careers, relationships?
Yeah, so listening to their emotions, being honest, I know that we tend to listen to our minds a lot more, but I
Mhm.
think the secret or the secret sauce is in the connection. So you don't want to ignore your mind entirely and go to the other extreme, but I think that when we are able to combine, the heart wisdom with the mind wisdom, that's the place where you can really be in a better place to make decisions because you are going to have all the information available to you. And
Yeah.
I also believe that it requires courage because in those situations, normally you need to name things that are difficult, right? And having that courage to name this relationship is not working, or I need something different in my life, or I'm going to make that hard call, right? That's it requires courage, and allowing yourself as a woman to have that courage and still move forward knowing that you are scared. It's okay to be scared, right? It's what you
Yeah.
do with that and not letting that fear move you away from pursuing your dreams or living your best life.
Yeah. I had an assistant years ago that worked for me for she worked for me for about 7 or 8 years, but and it was really interesting because she could do everything I asked. She could make those phone calls. She could whatever it was I needed, she could do. But when it came time for her to have to do something for herself,
Mm.
she would fall apart. Like it was just the strangest thing. And she even admitted it. She said, I can do whatever you need me to do, but when it comes time for me to make phone calls for myself or just little things, she just had a terrible time doing it.
Yes. And that's another part, and that goes to the E, the elect your responses. A big part of, I think, going through any transition is identifying those patterns. And
Yeah,
patterns of behavior are helpful because they really help us to move through our days without having to make all these small decisions. But we
yeah,
all have patterns that are actually hindering our ability to do our best work or to be our best selves in the world. And
yeah,
going through that process of identifying, okay, when this happens, or when I'm feeling this way, this is my pattern, it can be very eye-opening to see, oh, how am I? Because in many cases, we get on our own way for success, right? Like
yes,
the obstacles are not external, they're internal, right? It might be a mindset thing, it might
yeah,
be not taking or not doing anything for yourself. It can be a variety of things, but when you are able to analyze and see those patterns, it can be very powerful to see, oh yeah, that's actually not helping my process, so let me
yeah,
recreate and adopt a new behavior that can actually be helpful.
yeah, yeah. I think the key is you have to be aware of it though.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're shut down to even being aware, then
Yes.
that's a whole other hurdle.
Yes, and that's why we always start with the honor your emotions because that's
Yeah.
the piece, that's almost like the foundation of your
Yes.
self-awareness. And when you can see your emotions with a little more clarity, then you can take
Yeah.
that next step to say, okay, now I can look at my patterns.
Yeah. Well, can this model help us recognize burnout before we even reach the point of complete exhaustion?
I believe so. And
Yeah.
I think that it's when you have that model as a framework, as a way of kind of moving through the world, it's easier because you are not disconnected from yourself. It's almost like you are on speed dial with yourself. You know what's happening, right? You know when you feel your best. And you can also recognize, well, am I going through a period of high stress and this is temporary, or am I putting myself under so much stress all the time that I'm not able to be in a calm state ever in my life? So all those indicators, when you have that self-awareness and when you are practicing emotional intelligence, it becomes more clear. So you can see those signals, you are not ignoring them, you can address them right away. And that sometimes it doesn't mean that you are going to make big changes in your life, but just having that awareness, sometimes it's even can relieve some of that stress because you are just naming that that's a difficult situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you have said that your work helped you reconnect with your purpose and your story. So, how are our personal stories connected to our emotional well being?
Oh, I think they are almost I would say the foundation. One of the questions that I kept asking myself when I was writing Living with the Heart in Mind was, what are the stories that need to be told?
Mm,
And that meant that for me, there were some stories that I wanted to tell in the book as a way to not only share my experience, but also illustrate how these tools of emotional intelligence can help you in real life challenges. And while my intention when I started writing those stories was uh, outward facing because I wanted to help others, it really helped me heal even things that had been sitting there for a long time. Just being able to share stories from my background and my
yeah.
childhood and things that had impacted the way that I see the world, that I move in the world, being able to put them in writing gave me that space for reflection, for alignment, and also to connect some of the things that were happening today that maybe had a root in the past. So it was actually very healing for me to be able to tell those stories.
Yeah, and getting them onto paper. And I think it releases. It's a bit of a release as well. You're not, I mean, we can only stuff so much in there, right? And then it's got to
Yes.
come out because you can't put any more in.
Yeah.
So if you can find a positive outlet such as writing, that can totally help you just to feel better and just to get it right out of your system. And like you said too, for self-reflection, because once you've got it down, now you're able to look back at it.
Yes. Go back and also have a little more compassion towards yourself during that time to say,
Yeah.
wow, you went through that and this is what happened, and just offering that helping hand almost to your younger self. It can
Yeah.
be very important too. And when you put it in writing, even if you are not, publishing your work, if you can,
Yeah.
fantastic. And I know Julie will help you with that, right?
Yeah.
But if you can't, it's still such a process. It's such a bridge to
Mhm.
healing because you are just sharing, right? Like it doesn't live within, it can live on the page. And you can relieve some of that you are carrying so you can be more open to life's experiences, right? The
Yeah.
positive, whatever experiences are coming your way, you are able to embrace them better when you are not carrying all that, if that's a weight in your backpack.
Yeah, no, for sure. We need to lighten the backpack for
Yes.
sure. So,
Yes.
do you think it's possible to remain committed to meaningful work without sacrificing ourselves to do it?
I think it is a delicate dance, but it is possible.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that it requires, like, if I were to, have that conversation back with myself a few years back, I would encourage myself to slow down sooner. I would have encouraged myself to slow down sooner to see what actually was happening instead of trying to push forward. But I think it is possible, but you have to include yourself in the circle of care. So if you are doing, mission-driven work and purpose-driven work, and you are out there helping others, you have to include yourself in that help, in that kindness, in that care, because it's long-term sustainability, right? If you
Yeah.
cannot give from an empty bucket, and you are a better person and more fun to be around probably if you have your bucket is full, right? If you have the energy, if you have the health, if you are mentally, you are, in a good place. And if you are not, also acknowledge that it's not a personal failure. Like, life puts so many things in front of us that we have to tackle, and sometimes we need to go down so we can go up. So knowing that it's a normal experience.
I love that. I'm going to write that down. Knowing that we have to go down in order to go up.
Yeah.
Yeah. We should just go up from up, though. Wouldn't that be better?
Yes, yes, yeah, but that's not real life.
No. No, but that would be good.
It could be good.
Yeah.
And I think that part of this is also gratitude. I have a
Yes.
gratitude practice, and I know that in my life, even the challenging moments that I've gone through, there's always something that I've taken away from challenging experiences. And it has nothing to do with did you deserve that or not? You made it happen. Like, I'm not interested in answering those questions, but the
Mhm.
question of, like, I'm dealing with something difficult and I can learn something from it. And normally you are, we are resilient women. We can overcome and go to the other side with with those lessons that we have learned, and then go up from there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what compelled you to share such a personal experience in living with the heart in mind?
Uh, it was, in a way, it was self serving, because I was looking for my own healing, and
Mm,
the writing was truly a bridge to going back to myself and finding myself again.
yeah,
And the process of writing the book, of reflecting on the tools, on really thinking through what I had gone through, it's not uncommon. But I also knew that there were so many misconceptions about burnout. And I know that when I was writing the book, I talked to people and I was like, oh, I'm writing a book on burnout. And then people would start to open up and say, oh, I'm struggling too. So there's something about naming our challenges and do it from a place of courage, where you are not assigning failure, you are not assigning weakness to that experience, but you're just saying, this is something that happened to me, and these are some of the things that I've done to support myself, and I want to share them with others to support them in going, like, hopefully avoiding going through that, but if you are going through that, tools that could help them. So
yeah,
that was a little bit why I wrote the book. And even when it wasn't a book about burnout, until one day I was actually writing the news that I was writing a new book. And as I was writing, and I was like, well, this is where it really started. And I was like halfway through the book, I was like, wait, this book is really about burnout. But I didn't realize that it was about burnout until I was ready to share it with others. And I was
yeah,
like, wait a moment, this whole thing started because I was feeling that way. So then I went back, and everything, there were pieces that clicked, because I was truly rooting the book in my own experience and just naming it from page one, right? This is what
yeah.
it is, versus saying, oh, and this can help you with burnout. It's so much more impactful when you talk about it from your personal lived experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's somebody out there who's, as you said, going through it, they may read it or hear something about it, and then it clicks and helps them to understand what's happening. Because it's not. I burnt out from a career, and you don't really know you're in it until it's too late, almost.
Yes.
Yeah, and then you're just so burnt out that there's no going back.
Yes, that you just want to, it's so, I mean, the feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm and just depletion are so high that as you said, people don't want to do it anymore. Like you can't bring yourself to go into that environment anymore.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a toxic environment, it doesn't need to be that you are working in a bad place. There
No.
are so many things that get us to burnout. So my hope is that if we are talking about this topic and talking about what are the signals, what are the things that we are missing, and being honest and open, that people are actually able to do something before they get to that point. I think that that's truly
Mhm.
my purpose today, to be able to help others before they get to that point of full depletion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what do you hope, although I think you might have just answered this question, what do you hope a woman recognizes about herself while she's reading this book?
That they are worth it. I would
Yeah.
say that's the very first thing, that they are worth the time they are investing. And this is the book is something that you have to sit with it for a bit, right? It has a ton of tools that you can do, but you have to engage in the work. So it has to get you to arrive to you in a moment when you are committing yourself to your own care and kindness and engage with the work. Is very reflective, but if you engage with the work, there are so many angles that you can go about taking care of yourself that will, I think that it would be appealing to many, many women.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, tell us where we can get your book. How can we reach out and find you?
Yeah, so the book is Living with the Heart in Mind, is currently available in anywhere you get books. You will find it. And if people want to connect with me, they can go to my website, loreamartinez.com. And I have a free self-assessment that women can take right on the homepage. And that will get them a little snapshot of where they are today with their process. So that's always fun to get a little data on, hey, how am I doing with all these different skills? And that will give you a path forward to start taking care of yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Well, if a listener is, oh, just a sec, before I say that, I just want to let everybody know that I'm going to make sure that Lorella's notes are all in the show. So all the links on how you can reach out to her and how you can get the book. So all of that is going to be there. I almost forgot to say that. They might be furiously writing it down, but it'll be there for you. So if a listener is exhausted, disconnected, and quietly wondering, is this all there is? What would you say to her?
I would say it's not. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. And it might sound cliche, but when you are in that dark place and it doesn't look like there's anywhere moving forward, know that there is a place to go, that you have the inner resources to move forward and to overcome. But at the root of all of it is being honest with yourself, and is having that courage to acknowledge what is really happening for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being willing to do this. This is just such an important topic. And as I said, I burnt out and I had no clue. I was clueless. I'm going to be honest. I didn't think burnout was real. I thought, what a bunch of wimps.
Yes.
That's what I thought. And then, uh-oh, I'm stuttering. I'm not answering my phone. I'm having anxiety. I'm losing clients. All of a sudden, where's everybody going? Because I've been so successful for 30 years. All of a sudden, this isn't normal. And slowly I started to wake up and went, yeah, I can't do this anymore. I went too far. There was no salvaging it.
Yeah.
I knew. And so I think for anyone out there that's listening and grabs your book, they should definitely grab your book because, like with me, I had no clue. I was just carrying on day after day after day, no idea what I was doing to myself until I hit the wall. And I think if you love what you do and you want to keep doing it, you have to realize if you're pushing yourself too much.
Yes.
Yeah. So get the book, people. Okay? Go to the show notes, get the book. Okay, well, thank you so much for being willing to do this. I have appreciated it so much. I've loved having this conversation with you, and I wish you all the best in success.
Thank you, Julie. It has been my pleasure.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you all for being here, and we will see you next time on Women Like Me, Stories in Business. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.